and in walked Rudy Pensa after Rudy and Mark had their little coffee fete and came up with a design for a guitar that would fit the needs of both a Telecaster, a Stratocaster, and a Les Paul. So Mark didn't have to do quite so many instrument changes on stage.
In 1978, Mark Knopfler changed the world with Dire Straits' debut album, full of amazing guitar fingerpicking and colourful stories. Almost 50 years later, he is still telling his amazing stories, and Planet Guitar today is delighted to welcome Kerry Keane, who is Christie's specialist on musical instruments, to tell us about some of them. Welcome, Kerry.
Thank you very much, Paul, and thanks for inviting me this morning. For me, it's a very exciting collection to work on. There's 122 items in the sale, predominantly guitars, a few odder instruments. There's a mandolin and a early slide guitar, and as well as a balalaika of all things, including some amplifiers. And when it's a guitar hero of your own, like Mark Knopfler is, it adds it deepens the excitement for me as a musical instrument specialist.
Sure. Has Mark Knopfler himself been involved?
He has, as well as his team, and they've been extremely integral in the process of gathering the information on each one of these instruments. And it's been an absolute joy to work with him and especially his team. Glenn Sagers, who is his guitar tech for many, many years, and his prior guitar tech, Ron Eve, another wonderful gentleman to be working with. They are wells of knowledge to tap into.
Has Mark himself then been around Christie's looking at guitars and seeing them displayed and things?
Who's actually in here on Thursday before we opened our view publicly and walked through the rooms and sort of gave a gasp. He said, I didn't realize I had quite so many guitars. He didn't exactly cry, but he said, it's choking me up a little. I think there's a few I'm going to miss.
How does this auction rate alongside other major guitar auctions that Christie's has done?
Mm-hmm. The collections, the sales always reflect the musician, the player, and every player of the height of expertise like Mark Knopfler or Eric we've done in the past, or David Gilmour, Nile Rodgers. These collections always reflect their artistic prowess as musicians. So they're always unique in what they present.
I understand before these guitars have been on display at Christie's that they've been almost on tour by themselves to New York.
Right. Well, we just took 24 highlights over to New York, and they were shipped over and on view for about 5 days at Christie's Rockefeller Center sale rooms. And there was a great response from the New York audience. I had people come in all the way from Chicago to look at these instruments when they were on view. Sadly, the whole collection couldn't go to New York, but what we did bring caused quite a bit of excitement.
In 2007, Mark Knopfler, one of his signed guitars that he was auctioning in a charity, went missing. So I'm wondering what Christie's does to take care of these jewels.
Christie's is very well versed at shipping and moving fine art around the world, and whether it's a Stradivari violin or a Mark Rothko painting or a Monet, we're going to treat a guitar belonging to Mark Knopfler with the same care and expertise. So,
where might these guitars go when they're sold? Is there a typical buyer?
There is. Well, there's a narrative that sort of runs through the buyers, albeit players, musicians, players, but amateurs. And then there are those who purchase instruments just solely for the association to the artist. But I think that narrative is always a great passion for the artist.
I think Mark Knopfler himself has expressed an interest that he would love to see them being played.
Absolutely. I mean, Mark views these instruments as tools of the trade, like all musicians, and he has this wonderful turn of phrase that goes like this. He said, "There's a song in every guitar," and he hopes that these guitars will find their way into another musician's lap, and more songs will come out of them.
Well, could you please pick a few and tell us about some of the stories behind them?
You know, what's shocked me about this collection is how it represents graphically Mark Knopfler's career from, very early on up to the present. And the two instruments that really excited me in sort of early part of his career were the two Schecters. First, the black Schecter Telecaster, and then the red Schecter. The black Schecter, purchased back in 1980, was used in making movies recordings, and most identified with listeners to his performance on Solid Rock. Over the years, he changed the black pickguard on that black Telecaster, and put a white pickguard on it. And now when I look at it, it looks like it's a tuxedo dressed for dinner. It's really classy, but yet it has this sort of dark aspect to it. All the hardware has all been anodized in black. It has a sort of a rock star dressed in leather with a white shirt look almost. It's terrific. And the red Schecter, equally as important, flashy. I mean, red always trumps every other color. It's a rock and roll guitar. It looks like a hot rod on stage. And I associate that guitar, and I think many fans do, with that great hit of his, Walk of Life.
I gather the sort of projected sale price is between £4,000 and £6,000. Is that correct? Seems very low.
That's about right. I'm gonna have to go back to my catalog. I can never remember all the estimates as we sift through them. But that is the projected pre-sale estimate. What happens on the day of the sale when the hammer falls? I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell you, but there's always great excitement in the room, and we expect prices to maybe be coaxed up above that. The Schecters are magnificently made instruments, and in 1980, the work that was coming out of the Schecter workshops in California were actually surpassing what was coming out of the Fender workshops at the time, and that's exactly why Mark chose these instruments.
What about the 1959 vintage Gibson Les Paul Standard? Could you tell us about that one?
Well, you certainly picked the jewel of the sale. Out of 1,700 flame tops, Les Paul standards made between 1958 and 1960, the 59s are the most coveted, and this one survives in spectacular condition. Well played, and it's got a great performance history. Going right back, I'm trying to remember who had it before. Bobby Trench, British player, who played with just about everyone: Van Morrison, Humble Pie, Freddie King, Jeff Beck, and from him it went to Mark, and Mark's played on it quite a bit. He's got two Les Paul standards, a 58 or vintage ones, I should say, a 58 and the 59, and he has decided to let go of the 59, and he's decided to keep the 58, which is interesting. It has a thicker neck, but in the marketplace of vintage instruments, it's the 59s that really have the most desirability in the marketplace.
Which songs did he play with the 59?
With the 59, oh, see, now you're challenging me. Wishing my colleague here can fill me in.
Well, he recorded Cleaning My Gun with it, and he also used it quite a lot to play Brothers in Arms on stage.
Okay.
Did you get that?
Yes, I did.
Brothers in Arms and Cleaning My Gun.
Yeah.
And Song for Sonny Liston.
And Song for Sonny Liston. Now that I didn't know.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. I understand that one has a kind of a price of around 10 to 15,000, whereas the 1959 vintage Les Paul Standard has got a price of up to $500,000.
It does. A pre-sale estimate on that on the 59 is 300 to 500,000. And that is about the market rate for a 59 Les Paul these days.
Forgive me, I thought you were asking about the 59.
I thought, yes. So
The 1983 Les Paul was really played for Brothers in Arms and Money for Nothing.
Money for Nothing. I
Yeah.
mean, right. The 1983 reproduction 59 Les Paul, which he purchased in New York in 1984 from Rudy Pence's shop on 48th Street. That instrument is most associated with both the recording and his performances of Money for Nothing. I mean, a great global hit, a song we love in America.
Of course, Rudy Penso was a famous Argentinian luthier and a good friend of Mark.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Mark Knopfler, every visit to New York, he always stopped into Rudy Pence's shop since 1979 in their first meeting. And they formed quite a bond.
Could you tell us to finish just on the guitars about the 1988 Pensa Sur Mark I?
That I absolutely love in this sale. It was made. There's a great backstory about that instrument. John Suhr, the luthier who constructed the instrument, was making that guitar for himself, and he chose a piece of maple to laminate on the top of the mahogany body. And he had told me that he'd never done a carved top on a solid body electric guitar before, and he wanted to try it. So he found the most beautiful piece of maple he could, and he also decided he wanted it bound to give it sort of to accent the outline of the body. And he set apart carving the body, very much like a Les Paul is carved, arched. And he said the body was done. And he already had an idea of how he was going to make the neck and the aesthetics that he was going to fold into it, when in walked Rudy Pensa after Rudy and Mark had their little coffee fete and came up with a design for a guitar that would fit the needs of both a Telecaster, a Stratocaster, and a Les Paul. So Mark didn't have to do quite so many instrument changes on stage. And John says his boss walked into the shop and said, that guitar, this is the body we have to use for Mark. And he said he was absolutely crushed. But in retrospect, he had a very short time period to finish the instrument and a design, a sense that Mark had relayed, and it was very similar to what John had viewed the instrument to be like. He finished the guitar, completed it in time to make it shipped over here to London, so it could be used at, I think it was the Royal Albert for the Nelson Mandela birthday concert. So John Suhr said to me it was his crowning achievement to finish that guitar in time and for it to make it here to London.
What a lovely story. Thank you. Yeah. Well, we could go on, of course, with dozens of more of these amazing guitars.
There's a lot of guitars here to talk about, without doubt. Yeah.
But may I ask you about any other curiosities that you'd like to mention? Maybe an amplifier or something else that's unusual?
You know, what I found quite remarkable in the collection, and they were guitars, was Mark's very eclectic and curatorial sense in putting this collection together. He's got instruments that I had very little exposure to as an American, most notably the Jim Burns guitars. I mean, great British guitar making, which we don't see in the United States. And which we should really see more of. The Japanese Tesco guitars. I mean, wonderful pieces of sculpture. Half guitar, half race car, half rocket ship, and in great colors. Or the Italian works, the Echoes. I mean, they're spectacular. And we learned that these were instruments that Mark used. He's played on every one of these, and quite often the Echoes and the Tescos were used in recordings to sort of get that certain sort of retro sound when he wanted to achieve it.
Is there anything that an ordinary person who's not earning very much money might aspire to?
Yeah, well, certainly. Well, if there's someone's a mandolin player and they'd love a lovely little electric mandolin from the 1950s, there's a terrific harmony mandolin in the sale. If I'm not mistaken, I think the estimate's around 500 pounds. And it's terrific, solid work, terrific. I don't know any balalaika players, but if there is one out there, you can get a balalaika that once belonged to Mark Knopfler. What could be better than that?
Absolutely. I know that Christie's is obviously run for profit, but is there a romantic side to this particular auction, which is different?
There is, there is a philanthropic component, and Mark was very clear on this, that he wanted some of these proceeds here to go to the philanthropies that he has a passion about and that he supports. And so a portion of the hammer price on all the instruments will go to his designated focused philanthropies. But the last lot in the sale is a terrific, fabulous 2021 Les Paul, Gibson Les Paul, and played on by Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck, David Gilmour, Pete Townsend, Roger Daltrey, and signed by all of them for a very wonderful recording that will support the Teenage Cancer Trust. And 100% of the proceeds of the sale of that guitar will go to support this very important and wonderful philanthropy. It's a great cause.
It is lovely. I mean, it adds to the buzz of the whole auction.
It does. It does.
Just to finish, Kerry, could you share a story about the excitement among the staff around this auction? Just one anecdote.
When the designers here at Christie's in the marketing department, when they get a project like this, because there's such a reflection of their own popular culture, they really pull out all the stops. And I wish everyone could have the opportunity to walk through the galleries here at King Street at Christie's and see what a spectacular job they did in creating a museum quality exhibition that's open to the public, everyone coming in. I find both the clients who come in to look and my colleagues here at Christie's who come in to view the sale, they're mesmerized. Great visuals, great music. It's a wonderful opportunity to see people walk in the door for the first time, and suddenly there's this wonderful smile gets painted on their face. It's instantaneous. It's magic, and they've created great magic in these rooms.
Kerry, it's been a real pleasure, Planet Guitar, to speak with you today. Thank you so
you.
much, and good luck with the auction.
Thank you, Paul, and thanks for taking the time today. And let's keep in touch after the sale.
I hope so.
All righty.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye now.